when I'm going through these turns, I'm just like pushing, like it's all in my feet, and then the hands and the head is just to follow through. But the initial turn is starting from my feet. I try to push more like being a back-footed surfer, like 60% weight on the back, 40% on the front. Some people might be like, yeah, but that's gonna make you slow down. That's true. But what you need to understand is that if you want to keep the speed, you got to move your back foot up. If you're not surfing every day, then it's going to be hard to gain that paddle strength. Just anyone who's not really doesn't have that access to surf every day, then you need to be training.
Do you struggle with your paddle power? Well, I can go months without surfing and roll to pumping waves and surf 3-hour sessions multiple times a day after day after day by using the Basis Paddle Trainer. It was a total game changer for me, and it can be for you too. These things actually work, unlike elastic resistance bands. You can train your paddling anytime, anywhere, so you can catch more waves and have more fun. Just 10 to 20 minutes a couple times a week, and you're gonna be in insane paddle shape, right? So remember, the key to progression is more waves, and the key to more waves is more paddle power. Check it out at surfbasis.com. That's SURFBASIS.com. You're gonna be stoked.
All right. Welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Super stoked because we got Shayden Pacarro. He's a North Shore legend, pro surfer with Hurley, has a surf academy, just rips as well. So very stoked to have you and pick your brain. I got a ton of questions for you. But yeah, first of all, just thanks for joining.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk stories and hang out.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I have questions about riding big waves, rail turns, and just how you work as well with your everyday surfers as well in your surf academy. But the first question I have for you is, because I just saw this sick clip of you where you just do this massive front side carve. And my question is the key to surfing like Andy Irons just riding a Arakawa round pin and wearing board shorts that go below the knee, or what's the secret? What's the secret?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the secret is out there. It's just like kind of connecting to the moment and feeling original. I think that was like what inspires me the most about Andy Irons is that I feel like he was so original. He wasn't trying to imitate or be something else, or like I feel like all the coaching we do today is based off of him. Like he is the blueprint, His technique it was natural, and we're trying to imitate his technique. So that being said, I always try to remember, like as much as I try to practice or coach my students on technique, I try not to manipulate them too much because I want them to be original. I want them to have fun. And I feel like that's the most powerful tool in maximizing your surfing is being who you are. Like we are a certain way on land and we have so much stress, and, being in the water and riding that wave, it's like a moment of where you can express yourself and feel free. And like that's why Andy said feels like he's being kissed by God.
Yeah. Oh man, that documentary is amazing. I mean, it's heavy, obviously, but it is an amazing documentary. And I mean, I remember barrels where I've been like, I make it out. I'm like, it does feel kind of like you're getting kissed by God. I mean, not like the barrels that you're getting. I mean, they were definitely not as big as yours, but they are pretty good. I mean, but it's interesting what you were saying there that you, when you're talking about style, and you try not to change your client's style too much. Like, could you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what's the line? And, if you were giving advice to an everyday surfer, just like, how should they think about style? Should they study Andy Irons and be like, I want to surf like Andy, so I'm going to study this. I'm going to try to hold my hand like this and do my knees like that. Or should you kind of just like let it rip and just be like, all right, I'm just going to let my body go,
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a time and a place. Like if you're a beginner, just being in the water and trying to catch a wave is so much stimulation already. And I think at that level, you shouldn't be thinking about technique and hand placement and those kind of things, because it's really you just want to fall in love with it. You just want to be able to catch waves and ride the wave. And I think once you find your connection with the ocean, and you're really in tune, and you're riding waves, and you're able to, like, first things first is learn how to bottom turn and go down the line and trim down the line, and like read the wave and put yourself in the pocket, and let the wave do the surfing for you. And I think that's the first step for me, and that's how I learned surfing. Like, I just fell in love with it. And then I think you get to a point to where you're starting to turn but you feel a bit wild. That's when it's time to, like, okay, now let's touch up on some key points. And I think it's just surfing. It's like one of those things we want to surf for the rest of our lives. And sometimes I have clients that come to me, and even myself, I just want to learn overnight, but then that defeats the whole purpose. So I think when I'm trying to surf every session, I'm just focusing on like one or two little key minority points, like whether it's my working on my back foot, where my back foot needs to be, or my front foot, my stance, or maybe I'm standing too tall. So my goal will be, okay, just get my footing right, and focus on bending my knees, and then just riding the wave like that. And then once I make that natural, okay, cool. Now I'm starting to turn. But that you can't do a good turn if you don't know how to compress. So it's like you got to learn that. And once that becomes natural, then I think you can start going into all those other key points. Like, I've seen Doug Silva and a lot of surfers that coaches, and I've worked with Doug, and he has so many amazing techniques, the push and pull and the torqueology, and that stuff is all so powerful once you know how to surf. But if you're a beginner, you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just trying to ride the wave. So that's where it's like a time and a place kind of thing. For me, that's how I feel.
Right. That is really good advice, actually, because I think, like the listener, whoever might be listening to this podcast, I probably have a very broad range, I would imagine, of people listening to this podcast, from people that are more, earlier in their developing stages, and then kind of later on in their developing stages and more advanced. And I think it is really important, kind of like you said, to have to figure out, okay, what advice is applicable to me, right? So some of the stuff that Doug Silva is talking about, you have to be at a certain level to really start to worry about that. And of course, I think the hard part, though, is most people think that they're a lot more advanced than they actually are, right?
That's the hardest part, especially with Instagram. Like, everyone's watching, and I have clients of mine. They're like, "Look at this guy! I want to do that turn like Clay Marza." I'm like, "Oh, buddy." I don't want to bust your bubble, but it's just like,
right.
He's the only guy in the world that can do that right now. So don't even think about it. Like, slow down. But right. I'm not saying you can't get there. It's just you're never gonna get there unless you're not gonna graduate unless you go through the whole grade school. Like, you gotta work your way up.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the funny thing is, like, most people don't even know what they look like when they surf, right? So they're like, in their head, they're surfing like Clay Marzo, but then they're like, but then you show it to them, and they're just like, oh, man.
And they're so bummed. They're just like, oh, I thought I was ripping. You're like, no. But then we got to keep them uplifting. Like, we're here to surf, and that's kind of what I always remember. As much as we want to get better, it's like, once we start putting that pressure on ourselves, then it's just like, you lost, it's game over. Like, you might as well quit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, it's interesting, and I wonder. I'm curious because it sounds, I know that you work with a very broad range of surfers, right? So from beginner surfers to intermediate surfers. At what point do you actually show them footage of themselves? Because I have a buddy, right? He taught his sister how to surf, and he got some footage of her, and she was like a complete beginner, right? And she was like, can I see the footage? And then he's like, no, I don't think you should see the footage, And she's like, no, I really want to see the footage. And he's like, okay. And then he showed it to her, and then she saw her own footage, and then she got bummed, and she was like, I don't even want to surf anymore, because she was just so bummed at how her footage looked. You know what I'm saying? At what point do you say, okay, you should see the footage, and at what point do you start being like, okay, you should work on this stuff, Okay.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, I'm really I'm not like a blueprint kind of guy. I'm more like a feeler, like
Mhm.
spiritually, and I try to connect and like understand people, and I like to tailor my coaching and my approach to each individual. So I kind of have steps for each person, but once I meet the person, then I kind of have a understanding of how it's gonna go. So that being said, for the footage, I don't think there's like a at any stage where it's necessary, like, okay, because you're at this level now you should see some footage. I think it's more about who they are. Like,
Mm.
if they have a big ego, they're not going to see any footage. If they're like they have a big ego and you know that what they see is going to deflate their bubble, and like, or sometimes you have people who can't handle that criticism yet, then it's not time for them to see footage. But I could have someone who's like the first day or second day or very early on, but they're super open. They're open, they're honest, they're humble, they don't have high expectations, and they just really want to learn. Then at that point it's like, okay, here we go. Like, they really don't care how they look, they're just super stoked and they want to learn. So that's when I'm like, okay, you're open to footage. Whereas if they're not that person, then I kind of gotta like ease my way into footage where I'm like coaching them, but I'm trying to bring them back a little. Like, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. Like,
Mm.
until I find them spiritually like awakened to receive that footage and that information where I know they're gonna be grateful and they're not gonna be down on themselves, then I'll like show the footage. So I feel like, yeah, there's just no really exact time.
Right, right, right. Do you think it's better to have that mindset of just being open and less ego, or is it? Do you think that that's an advantage with if you're trying to improve at surfing?
Um, I think so. I would say so, just because we don't have much control of the ocean. And one day you can be the best surfer and have such an amazing session and be on every good wave, and then the next day you're not. And that can go all the way to Kelly Slater. Like, I'm sure he has those days too, and John Florence. Like, everyone has those days, but I would say the better guys have less of those days. Um, and their bad waves are probably like our just best wave ever. So you're
Right,
looking at them and you're like, wait, why are you bummed? Like, oh, that was a terrible wave for them, But
right, right.
but I would say ego is never really like a good thing in surfing. I don't know, maybe in life too. Like, I feel like I've been growing as a person and trying to have less ego because how I grew up and where I'm from, and maybe I developed too much of that. And but I also want to say it's good to have maybe not ego, but just more ambition, and like
Mm.
being open, but not being just like content with where you're at, like humble with where you're at, but like having ambition, like that hunger to get better. So I wouldn't say it's like an ego where you're like, oh, like cocky. Is just kind of like humble, but really hungry, like try to leave the ego out the door, like I would say. So
For
leave it
sure.
at the door.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, because I was reflecting on kind of our discussion, and I have a friend. He's been surfing his entire life. He's really good at like reading waves and getting good waves, but he doesn't. I don't think he's seen much footage of himself surfing. And then I remember he saw some footage of himself surfing, and he was like, "I don't even want to see that," and because he was just so bummed. Like, he saw it and he was just like bummed. You know what I'm saying? And then he was like,
Wow.
"I don't even want to see it. I don't even want to like look at it." And then I feel like it held him back because then he wasn't like, "Oh, I could do this better. I could do that better." But at the same time, surfing is like so different for everybody. Some people really want to learn and improve and like want to continually improve. Whereas I think he was like, I just want to go up and surf and catch good waves and have fun, even though he's not really progressing a ton. And there's
Totally,
no right or
totally.
wrong. There's no right or wrong, but it is just a difference in approach. So,
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And that's the ultimate reason why we surf. Yeah, it's like however it is for you, like what it is, then it's cool. So yeah, it's I really like to, if I'm gonna coach people, it's like because I know they're investing money and time.
yeah.
Like, nothing's free, so I really try to make sure that they want to learn. Like, if they're just doing it to have fun, then it's like, we don't have, then just like go have fun and we're friends and all, but I don't really want to yeah, it's a hard thing, like because you want to help them. You don't want to just take from them. So it's
Right,
like
right, right,
yeah, I don't know. Like your friend, he probably doesn't need coaching, he just wants to go and have fun and
right,
like
right.
enjoy surfing. And I'm sure he's always trying to get, maybe he's not trying to technically get better, but he's always trying to get a better wave.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And he can't deal with the ego blow. He probably wants to do better. I know he wants to do better turns, but he's just like, I can't deal with the ego aspect of it. Yeah. So it's
Totally.
interesting. So, thinking about, the different stages, all the way up to kind of the more, well, we'll get into the more advanced stuff in a little bit, but, are there any common mistakes that you observe? Like, what are the most common mistakes that you observe with your clients, starting at, let's say, more on the beginner side of intermediate? So let's say they're catching their own waves and, they're able to do all that. But like, where do you, and then up to like the more middle of intermediate and then up to the advanced? Like, are there any common mistakes or things that you see a lot that you just want to point out and you're like, hey, everybody needs to pay attention to this?
Yeah, the big one that I've been noticing is like it feels very natural to lean forward, like really heavy footed, front footed surfers, like I've been there where I was like really a front footed surfer. And you're always trying to do turns, but it's just you bog, or even like wanting to get speed, but you're leaning forward. So really like I want to go faster and like leaning forward. And I don't want to say that's wrong because I've seen people talk about how it's good and it is good. But I'm like I'm more like I try to push more like being a back-footed surfer, you
Mm.
know, um, like 60% weight on the back, 40% on the front. And you guys right now some people might be like, yeah, but that's gonna make you slow down. That's true. But what you need to understand is that I've learned this because I've worked so much with surfboards. And working with surfboards, learning about surfboards has actually helped me get more technical in my surfing and help me teach surfers. Um, you don't need to be leaning forward to go faster. You want to be a little bit on your back foot, but I think if you want to keep the speed, you got to move your back foot up. You
Mm.
can't be on the tail, because if it's
Right,
on the
right, right.
tail, it's gonna be like this. But if
Yeah.
you move your back foot up just a little, then the board's gonna go. Let's say like um you got the fins. If you can move your back foot up in front of the fins, that's when you're gonna go faster. Like go watch Andy. Go
Mm.
watch him. Like anytime he's pumping down the line, like his feet is up. And then when he wants to get radical, then he'll move his feet back.
Right,
So
right, right.
most times I'll tell people at the level that you asked me, like that, already going down the line and gonna start doing turns. It's like, okay, just set your line. Don't worry about anything. Just move your back foot up. See how it feels. Move it back. Just play with your footing. Um, when you step back, the board's going to be more responsive because it's going to use the rocker and the outline of the board. And when you move your foot up, it's like a turbo boost. And another reason why I always think this is like if you imagine a wave, the power source of the wave, it's like here beneath the water. Um, and I always felt like if I'm leaning forward too much on my front foot,
Hmm.
I'm disconnecting from the power source. Like
Interesting.
you want to be locked in like to the source. So if my energy, it's like I'm harnessing the energy from the wave and it's transferring to my board and my feet. Like I want to be like, it's like resistance. Want to be able to resist, and then when I want to drive, I grab that energy and pump. So that's when you're on your back, but then you lean forward, and you don't want to step. You want to push the weight forward, but immediately come back onto your back foot. So it's like a swoop. Like you're here,
Right,
but
right.
you're like your energy, but then because the board's like it has a rocker, So when you're here, you pump. You're gonna pump as you take off. You're like kind of leaning forward, and then as you hit the bottom of the wave, you're kind of pushing off the back, and you're boom, and you're driving, and then it's like a constant weight distribution, but I noticed like at a beginner stage of surfing, they're just really leaning forward. They're like,
Mm,
forward, forward, forward. I was like, hey,
right.
just like slow down a little bit, like try to lean back. And when the wave hits you, if you're leaning forward, I notice this a lot. Like the whitewash will come and they lean forward, but the wave pushes them and they pearl dive. But I'm
Right.
like, hey,
Right.
if you just lean back into the wave and let the wave push you, you're gonna ride out. It's the same with barrel riding. If you're riding the barrel, and you're on the foam ball, you don't want to be leaning forward.
Right. Right.
You want to be on the back of your board and like letting the foam push you out. So that's kind of like my key point to where I'm like, hey, like I know you think that you want to be leaning forward to go faster, but just trust me, like try to feel your back foot. And when you have more engagement on your back foot, it's gonna allow you to pump. And that's how
Mm,
you get speed. Like you don't want to ever just be still. And the board doesn't turn off the front foot. Like there's
right.
just it's just gonna dig rail. So you gotta really be more aware of your back foot and like
Yeah.
engage your muscle mind body connection to your back foot and try
Mm.
to be more of a back footed surfer. And that was my goal, like I had to work on that, and I instantly, like once I got that, just game over.
Interesting. And so when you were developing, and I should mention that, just for the people that are listening, you work extensively with Arakawa. So you know a lot about surfboards. If you guys
Yeah.
haven't listened to the interview I did with Eric Arakawa, you should definitely listen to it. But he talks a lot about the fine tuning and how he fine tunes the boards with your feedback. So that's definitely a good one to check out. Um, but it's interesting. So when you were talking about this, would you say you were more naturally front footed, and then when you adjusted to be more on your back foot, that's when things locked in for you? Or were you more naturally a back footed surfer, or how did that go?
I know I was fully more naturally a front-footed surfer, like when
Hmm.
I first started off. I would say I was like I'm probably still like more neutral,
Yeah.
not totally back-footed, but I feel like I'm more back-footed than I've used to be, like ever. Um, and yeah, like I just would always catch myself like digging rail too much, because I'm
Hmm.
just leaning forward way too much and not transferring my energy back, and that's a
Interesting.
lot to do with if we want to touch on torqueology about Doug Silva, how his hand and
Yeah.
the reason why he's saying to push your backhand down is to put the weight. He talks
Yeah.
the hip
Right.
turns, and you push onto your back foot, and when your front arm is opening, it's actually like releasing the off of the front, so it's like sending the energy. You're not digging it in. You're like pushing, but you're like off the back foot and then the front arm. You want the front of your board to be free. You don't want it to be digging in. So yeah, and you have these sharp rails on the back of the board and the fins, like that's where the board is. Like you can chop the front half of the board off, like it
Right.
looks good, it helps, but all the magic is in the fins and in the tail.
Right. Right. So I mean, how would you break down? I mean, that beautiful carve that you did, in that most recent clip, like when you think about kind of the mechanics of it, are you thinking committing almost all of your weight on your back foot through it, or are you doing like a shift in your weight distribution, or how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, when I'm approaching it, as I'm bottom turning, I'm really focused on like connecting with my back foot.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
when I'm at the top, obviously you're gonna like look over your shoulder and your weight's gonna move onto your back feet, but you still gotta balance out all of the weight. Because if you just lean over, it's your back foot is gonna come off of the grip pad, and you're gonna be on one leg and you're gonna fall. So even though I'm leaning over, I'm still thinking like lock that back foot in, like
Hmm.
leave the engage the rail and use the fins. So it's like I'm thinking more about my back foot, because naturally the way the wave is making me turn and where I'm trying to go, which is back to the bottom of the wave, it's gonna be it's just naturally for you to like lean, because your head's gonna look that way, so your body's gonna go that way, and your upper body's gonna go that way. But we can't. We got to make sure we anchor that back foot. So like in my mind, I'm thinking more of my back foot because I know that my upper body and everything else is it's gonna go. It's gonna go. It's gonna go front. It's gonna be there because I'm leaning into it. So yeah, I guess like I'm always trying to just think about my back foot.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, that's where the fins are. That's where you're going to get the most control. Um, and especially on like steeper waves, like a lot of the waves that you're surfing on, right? You're really going to need to make sure that you're locked into that energy source, because the waves are so gnarly, and you got to do that, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, one thing that's interesting is I was looking. One of the things that you mentioned is that how you're always striving to commit to your rail as hard and as long and as fast as you can in like a critical section. And there's this wave that you did. It was like a down carve in this. It was like a vertical section, and you down carved on
Mhm.
this thing, and it was just like such a gnarly turn.
Yeah,
I mean, what is
yeah,
that?
yeah.
What is so you're just like really committing to just be like, I'm going to hold that rail and just like go in the steepest section possible. It was super sick to watch, but like, how do you think about that? Is it just like what's going through your mind when you are hunting down
I
these
think
sections? Yeah.
I think it's like hi, bye. um as I'm approaching, I'm just like it's almost like for me that feels like making a barrel that you didn't think you were gonna make. So I'm approaching a section that I feel like it's not possible to do a turn. Like sometimes the section is requiring more of a snap. But I'm like, bro, if I just power through this lip and I just push through that thing and I just it's just gonna go. And that's
Yeah.
just like trusting your equipment and trusting your ability. And um, I want to say something because a lot of the technique everyone's talking about their hands.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But and even when I have beginners come to me and I'm like, hey, how do you turn? Oh, I use my head and my arms. I'm like, bro, like, are you surfing with your hands? No,
Right.
you're
Right.
standing on your feet.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, I focus so much on my feet. Like that's why I do so much training and I do squats and I do lunges. It's just so I'm like I can lock in. Like I want to be able
Mm.
to like just like be really connected to my board. And like I used no grip pad for so many years,
Mm.
and that I just like really like learned how to like grip the board. And so when I'm going through these turns, I'm just like pushing. Like it's all in my feet, and then the hands and the head is just it's just to follow through. But the initial turn is starting from my feet. So that's kind of where when I'm bottom turning, I'm really just like trying to compact and like okay, like the wave is pushing. I feel the energy running through my board, and I'm just trying to like keep that tension. Like keep
Yeah.
that tension and use that. Like it's not always like me like pushing all my might, but it's like using the tension of the wave to make me stronger. Like because if the wave is soft, like you can't push too hard. You're gonna over push, and that's when you kind of gotta be light on your feet. But if you have all that power in the wave, and then okay, like I have the speed. I'm not trying to get speed. I'm trying to maintain speed, and I just want to make sure I'm like solid on my feet, and
Mm-hmm.
like my core is like locked in. Because when I lean into this turn, I want everything to be tight. I don't want to be like loose and like I mean it doesn't you don't want to look stiff, but you still want to be like solid. So when
Right.
I'm back to that turn, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm just like trying to be solid. Like if you throw 3 plates on my back and I do a squat, I'm gonna like brace myself, and do
Yeah.
it good. So that's kind of where I try to transfer
Interesting.
my training into my surfing, and it's just like it's not really more of the physique, it's just more of like my connectivity. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to I I I was always taught just to let like only surf the wave for what the wave is like giving me, and that's just kind of how I was raised. And I think it's like a typical Hawaiian style, like try not to force much. And and I feel like you would think that it's hard to surf small waves, but if you really know how to work with the wave, you can surf a small wave because you're good at finding the energy pockets, and you know when to be light footed, you know when you can push, you know when to pump. So it's just like the wave is, it's like a dance, you know, and
Yeah.
she's leading the dance and you just gotta follow through. And yeah, so I guess it's just like that. And I try to do a lot of my technique training like in the gym, you
Hmm.
know, like when I coach technique with my clients, I try to do it in the gym, and I try to manipulate surfing, because if I just take them to the beach and I say, "Hey, try this," when they get on the wave, they already forget. And then they
Yeah.
might only, here on the North Shore, it's really crowded, so they might only catch 5 waves. So they only get to do it 5 times, and they're probably gonna fall. But if I bring them in the gym and I do and I do 5 sets of 20, they just did 100 turns. So
Right.
now it's
Right.
gonna be in their brain. And when we go surfing, I'm just like, hey, just remember what we did in the gym. That's all you
Wow.
gotta do. I'm not gonna be technical when we're in the water or on the beach. I'm not gonna be like trying to break it down, because I'm like, no, this is time to have fun. Now we're gonna have fun. So it's just a quick reminder, like, hey, remember what we did in the gym? Like that one tech. Let's go. You know, you did it 100 times. Let's do it again. Like it should be natural. You know, and I've been seeing results that way. So, and it works for me. So I try to see if it works on other people, and I see it working. So I'm stoked about that for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember I was looking and you had some really interesting workouts and it looked like you were using like these tiny little mini Bozu balls and you had like this like blade that was like vibrating and you were like working on these sliders as well. And I could see that you're working on your technique. It looked really interesting and fascinating. So you figured out a way to like simulate a lot of the things that you're going to do in on a wave.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, and that's honestly, like, I'm just gonna be real. Like when I train, I don't train to surf. Like I don't think about trying to get better at surfing, because I feel like maybe I was like just kind of natural with surfing, and I enjoyed it. And I it's all about like a mindset for me. I've grew up and I've lived in surfing so much, and I've just like, I've been hungry for it for so long that we always need a break. So when I hit the gym and I work out, like, you're gonna look at me and be like, oh, what is this guy? Like he's not even a surfer. Like,
Huh.
but it's because I'm just trying to make my mind like escape it.
Yeah.
And you put in the hard work, it's gonna show results no matter what. And for me, I found myself surfing the best when I'm like excited. If I take 3 weeks off from surfing and I go in the water, I'm like, I surf better than ever. And people are like,
Hmm.
how what, I didn't surf for 3 weeks, like, how are you surfing so good? I'm like, bro, I'm just like into it. I'm just like I'm
Interesting.
just my soul and my heart is just into it. I'm not my mind is not in two different places. I'm just right there. And I'm
Mm.
so into it that everything that I need to do, it's like the universe, God, it's telling me. And for me at my level, I've already done it so much that it's just like I know what I need to do. Whereas like a beginner, they don't have the experience yet. So like training in the gym, and stimulating surfing is like, that's when I try to like do more surf related um style of training, and I
Yeah.
practice on my own just so I know what I'm doing with those people. But yeah, like if I'm just gonna go outside right now, I'm like, I'm gonna work out in, like, it's not gonna do anything have anything to do with surfing.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, your entire, I mean, it makes sense, right? Your entire life is consumed with surfing and you probably spend so much time in the water when you can. And like, you've already, the technique, you learned like when you were a kid. So it all comes naturally, but you do have results that for your clients by doing these training methods. And so that's, I mean, that's really what the most important thing is when it comes to, the surf training,
Yeah,
right? So it is very,
yeah,
it is
yeah.
very interesting how that goes. I
Yeah,
think
I
what's,
try to, sorry,
go ahead.
no, I try to just explain to them like what's happening, why they're doing these tech, like using certain technique, because I could tell them to do it, and like it's one thing to try and do it, but it's one thing to know why you're doing it. And it's like everything, you gotta have your why. Like, hey,
Mhm.
why am I doing this? So it's like, why are you making me do this thing with my hands? Or why are you making me bend my knees? Why are you making me move my foot back and forth? It's like, hey, let me tell you why. So when you do it, you actually feel it. And that's one thing that it was been very helpful with Eric, because I've been able to ask questions. And when I get a board, I'll ask him like what he did, why he did it, and what he was trying to achieve with that change. So if I
Mm,
go out and I actually feel that, I'm like, hey, it worked. Like, or
mm,
I'd be like, I didn't feel anything, like. So it's like surfing is so much feeling, like more
for
than
sure.
anything. It's all feeling. So I just try to describe feelings, like, and
Huh. Yeah,
with
that's
my coaching and my boards.
I think that's so important. And I want to talk about the boards as well. But what is one thing, like when you're coaching your intermediate clients, like what is one thing when you explain to them, they're like, what? And then like you explain it to them and then they get it. Is there anything that like surprises them where you're like, oh, do this? And they're like, why am I doing this? What is this feeling that I should be searching for? But then you explain to them and they're like, oh, is there anything like that? Or is it more, um, I don't know. I just
the
thought I'd
the
ask that.
the funniest one is like if you have a beginner and there's a set coming and you're like
Uh-huh.
paddle out and they start paddling out like towards the beach.
Right.
They're like, oh,
Yeah.
you said paddle out. I'm like, I start laughing. I'm like, no, I mean like out to the horizon.
Right, right, right,
uh,
right, right, right.
that's the funniest one. I'm just like, okay, like out is out, in
Yeah,
is in.
yeah.
but
And then they get
tech
clobbered because they were going the wrong way, and the set lands on their head, right? So,
totally.
yeah,
But I guess the one thing, it's the back foot thing. Like
yeah.
that's what I've been experiencing a lot because they're just like, wait, why? Like why do I need to lean back? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like it's hard. They think it's gonna slow them down. They're like, what? But I was taught to lean forward, and I watch a lot of other surf schools and beginners, and like they push their students in, and they're like, lean forward,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm just like, oh, it's just kind of funny, and I keep it to myself because who am I to go around like, oh, you're doing it wrong? Like they're having fun.
Right,
This is my academy. This is my
right,
perspective and my belief. So if you want to learn from me, this is what I'm gonna say, and
right,
that's how I feel. So, and this is what I think works. And if it does for you, then awesome. If it doesn't work for you, then it's all. At least we tried,
right.
But because nobody's really like there's no one way, there's always many ways. But that's the big one. Is the whole back foot thing, like
That's
putting more
interesting.
weight back. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting. But I think I understand what you're saying, right? That concept of being connected to the wave energy, especially when I think about like waves in Hawaii for sure. And it's not like you're saying that you only have all of your weight on your back foot, right? It's that you do have weight on your back foot and you have weight on your front foot, but you want to make sure to engage the entire rail, right? And by
Yeah.
driving off your back foot, you can really pump and create more energy by driving off that back foot. So it does make
Yeah.
sense to me.
I think it's just no matter what we try to do, like in order to stay on the board, you gotta have your front foot engaged. But I think we overthink it. So
Hmm.
it's like for me, I try to like it's okay if they go too far to the back foot because it's easier to just tell them, okay, lean forward.
Hmm.
It's like a natural thing, but it's hard to lean like, oh, lean back to go forward. Like, what are you talking
Right, right,
about?
right.
If you say go forward, it's just like it's just gonna click right away in their brains. But like to get someone to like lean back, it doesn't feel natural.
Yeah,
To like have that weight like more here instead of like here. Like, okay,
totally.
you're right here. So I really just push that. And once I see them like, okay, you went too far on your back foot. That's a good thing. You know.
Yeah,
Now you just gotta when you feel like you're too far back, just lean a little bit forward. But at least you're aware of your back foot. You
right.
know.
That's so true. Also when I think about it, because there's a lot of people, especially as you're going from like a longer board to a smaller board, you're going, if you're not engaging weight on the back foot, then that rail can pop out. But a lot of people are surfing like big, wide boards, so you're not really going to be engaging that back foot as much. They're just going to be driving off their front foot and pumping. But then when they want to do a turn, they don't have awareness of their back foot, and then they can't do a turn because they're not able to, use the back foot. And that's why that awareness of that back foot is so important. That makes sense.
And I kind of because I did experiments with myself from like, hey, leaning back, like maybe it's only good for when the waves are good, but then I've actually like tried it in small waves,
Hmm.
and you gotta watch like Jack Robinson. Like he's so twitchy. Like if when he stands up, he'll stand up and you'll see him do this little like twitch. And him and I were good friends, and we always talk about this like ankle, like this. It's all in your ankles, like this little ankle twitch. But the only way you get this ankle twitch, it's like it's in the back. You know, like when you
Huh.
stand on the back, it's like there's this little like whoop whoop whoop, like where you can
Mm.
swivel the board around, but it's on
Huh.
your back foot, and that's why he can turn the board so quick. It's
Yeah.
because he's using his back foot. And when I think about riding small waves, it's about it's more technical than big waves because like it's there's all this little pockets of energy. So you want to be quick. You want to be able to like turn on a dime
Yeah.
and put yourself right back into the power source. So in I've actually experienced like in small waves, it's like probably back foot works even better when the waves are
Really?
small. Yeah, because
Fascinating. Huh.
like you're in the power source and you're like, okay, the wave's dying out here. I need to go back this way. If you turn
Yeah.
off your back foot, whoop, you're gonna be right back in the pocket. And that's
Hmm.
how you see good surfers make it look easy. You don't need to be like Huntington hop, like
Right.
pounding through the wave. You know, if you put your board and yourself in the pot, you know, you're weaving back and forth, tick tack, zigzag, zigzag. If you're if the wave is weak and you're trying to zigzag, but you're doing it on your front foot, you're probably gonna zig, dig, and fall. But
Hmm.
if you're on your but if you're on your back foot, you're gonna zigzag, zigzag, get in the pocket. Okay, pump, pump, bang. You know, like
Right. 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 Yeah.
so you want to be quick, and there's that's the secret to being quick is like on the tail, bro, on the tail. And you never want to be still. Like for a good surfer and like people intermediates who are trying to get better, you don't ever really want to be like just still. You always want to be moving. You know, you want to be moving.
Mm.
Boom, 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 bang, bang. You know, you all rhythm. You know, like
Right.
connecting the dots. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I've like learned like, oh wow, it really does help with the whole back foot, you know, like
Right.
just
You can.
being able to work the board off the back of the board, back of the tail.
Right. You're gonna have to send me a clip of this ankle swivel thing that you're talking about because it
Yeah,
sounds
from
really interesting.
Jack.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I need to.
yeah. Go
I want
watch
to.
him. Go watch his footage. You see it. Like as soon as he takes off, he'll do this like little pump pump, but it's like high line.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He'll
Huh.
like he'll like do this little whoop whoop. It's so subtle that you're not noticing it, you know.
Right.
But that's how he's going so fast, like boom boom. Then you drop down and be like wow. But that little like as soon as you stand up and you like pump, you know, even if he's like just gonna drop down, you see him do like a little like you know it gets him
Yeah.
going, and then he can settle down and draw his line. Um, but and I feel like it gets the anxiousness. You know, you feel good like once you get up and you're like, okay, move. You know, and then
Right.
and you're
Right.
not
Right.
just
Right.
like and stuck. You're like you're already going. You know, so
Right.
um, yeah, the ankle that even John does the ankle thing. You gotta watch John. He does the
Huh.
ankles.
I'm gonna study. I'm gonna study their ankles. I mean, I studied them a ton, but I've never been like, all right, let me look at their ankles. That's something interesting. Ankles and
Watch.
back foot generating speed. I'm gonna definitely look onto that. Okay, that's something I've never thought about. This is fascinating. Actually, definitely gonna have to do some
Yeah,
studying into this.
I've actually watched a few of your things, and I've actually never heard of anyone really like talk about ankles and feet. And I'm just like, what? Like, I wonder why. Like, but I think it's like
Yeah,
so subtle, and it's like it's easier for us to focus on the arms, you
for
know.
sure, for sure.
Um,
No, I know it's
but
all the
it's
feet for sure. It's the entire body, right? But yeah,
the
the feet is
exactly,
yeah, nice.
exactly.
Well, so what are some of the other things that your clients struggle with? I mean, do they struggle with paddling? How important is paddling?
Paddling is it's a it's a big one. Like some people paddle weak, but they got good timing, so they catch waves. Some people are strong paddlers, but they're like over aggressive, so their timing is off, and then it works against them. So it's like it's almost like a thing. Like it's all timing as well, you know. Like I guess if you're trying to chase a wave down, like oh it's over there, okay, like if you paddle hard, it's gonna get you there, but also like being efficient with your paddling, because you don't want to paddle super hard and then you get to the wave and stand up on the wave and you're tired. So
Hmm.
it's like it's more about trying to position before the wave even comes, you know? You're like, okay, like you feel it, you're positioning, you're moving, you know, you want to be able to the goal is to catch the wave easy, you know, like boop boop boop, you're in and you're on. Um, but paddling is a big one where it's like some some people are like they paddle hard. It's just like knowing you're paddling. You know, like obviously we're all gonna get stronger at paddling, and we need to. That's why I'm so interested to see your device. But in the meantime, it's like okay, like what is your strengths? Like know how hard you can paddle, know how fast you can go, so that way you can perfect your timing. Like if you're a hard paddler, then you can wait a little longer as the waves coming to you. You're like, because I have people who paddle hard and they go and they start paddling and it'll break right on them. So
Right.
I'm like, hey bro, like just wait, like, or just paddle easy, like, you know, like less and then hard at the end. Whereas some people they're very weak at paddling, so you kind of gotta position a little further out
Hmm.
so that way they can get an earlier start.
Yeah.
So positioning has a lot to do with like based off of your paddling ability. You know, like
100%.
okay, hey, I don't paddle as hard, so maybe I can paddle like, you know, I can sit a little further out, but paddle earlier, so I can build momentum. Whereas like if you paddle really hard, maybe you don't need to sit as far out, but you can, you know, you can for sure. And I think that has a lot to do with the crowd as well. And here in Hawaii, there's like a lot of crowd, and
Yeah.
majority like either a right or a left. So there's no beach break. It's like one peak. So it's kind of a lot to do with like positioning yourself to use your paddle ability to catch waves, like so you can out position the rest of the people. You know, like if you're a really strong paddler and there's lots of people, then like okay, I can sit far out and like see
Yeah.
this wave. But then you also gotta be wave smart, like
Right.
no, because some
Right.
people like they don't understand the waves yet, so it's like it's hard for them to sit further out because they need to see it like build.
Right.
It's like
Right. They can't
whereas
read
if
it
you're
early enough.
they can't read it early enough. Whereas like if you're good at that, then you kind of know it's a good wave before anyone else, so you can like you can react first.
Yeah. But how so those are all incredible points, right? Like your timing is crucial, reading the wave, the positioning. What about the fitness side of things though? Do you have clients that show up and are just get smoked like so soon, or how does that
I
go
feel
for you?
like I feel like that's almost everyone. Most people get, um, especially here in Hawaii, we have like the paddles are a lot further,
Yeah.
and let's say I get most clients, they come from like beach breaks, so it's like a short paddle and a short ride. So it's like they pop up too quick because they just want to like, you know, the wave's gonna be over, so they're just trying to get up quick, and then they have short paddles where it's like okay, like, and then they kind of get defeated. They're like, oh, I know how to surf. I'm like, hey, you just gotta slow down here in Hawaii. Like when you get the wave, brother, wave is so long. Like don't rush. Like you know, like
Yeah.
take your time, and obviously you're not surfing Pipeline or VLAN. We're at Chun's or we're at Lonnie's, so it's like it's a little more forgiving. If you're gonna surf pipe, then you gotta be the fastest pop up ever, you know. But but yeah, so it's just kind of like the paddling. It's like something that builds up, and if you're not if you're not surfing every day, then it's gonna be hard to gain that paddle strength. Um, which is why like I'm so interested to see your tool, because I'm actually developing some training stuff, you know, like for my clients, like oh, here's a little program you can do, like if you're a pilot and you're traveling around the world, like
Mm.
when you're on when you know you have a layover, like, or you're, yeah, just anyone who's not really doesn't have that access to surf every day, then you need to be training, like whatever it is, like conditioning is a big one, you know. So um yeah, like, and it also just depends on like if you even have tools, like if you have rowers or skiers or
Yeah.
whatever, then it's like the next best thing is like, bruh, if you have a swimming pool,
Right.
like
Right.
if you can go to a public pool and learn how to freestyle, good. Then it's like that's like huge. And technique, technique is a big deal. You really want to be able to arch up and have that good mobility. Um, and just like elbows up, cutting through the water when you're landing, like boom, and like trying to have a rhythm. Like when once one hand's leaving, then the other hand's like already engaging. So it's like it's not like jerky. You want to be smooth,
Mm.
and if
Yeah.
you're smooth, then you don't really have to paddle as hard. Then you become more efficient. Like in Hawaii, we grow up paddling canoe, and you have a team of whether it's four-man canoe, 12-man canoe. It's like if one person is off beat, then the whole boat's like
Mm.
jerking and you're going slow. But if you have the guy in the front, and when his paddle is hitting the water on the left side, the guy behind is going to be paddling on the right side, and your paddle better be hitting the water at the same time as him. Same
Yeah.
as the guy behind me and the guy behind that guy. So we're all in sync. So it's like at first you're like hard to get speed, but once the boat is moving, it's a long paddle, so we can't push 100%. So we got to back off to like 50 or 60, but it's like rhythm, flow, flow, flow. And if we're all in sync, you're gonna be going fast. So I
Mm.
try to think with that in my paddling, like okay, you know, I'm gonna paddle hard for when the lip's about to land on my head. Then I can get out of the way. That's when I'm gonna be like paddling really hard. Or
Yeah.
if like the waves intense and the water's sucking up and you're gonna paddle really hard. But other than that, you're just like okay, just like recovering. So learning to like recover as you paddle, but be efficient, like good breathing, like just like any exercise, like exhaling and a lot of breathing. So with my students, I try to just teach them to be more efficient with their paddling.
Oh yeah, efficiency is huge, right? If you burn yourself out because of bad technique, even if you're incredibly, you got the raw fitness, but you have bad technique and you're not efficient, then you're just going to be pushing all that energy, and it's just going to be wasted, right? You're not going to be maximizing the input versus and getting the maximum amount of output. So that's for sure something to focus on. All right, well, we're getting close to closing up. I had a few finishing questions that I wanted to ask you as we close up. First one is there anything that has been a game changer that you've implemented into kind of your, your daily routine, whether it's like physical training or mental things or creative things? Is there anything that, new that you think everybody should know about that's been really big for you?
Biggest thing for me is obviously been my family. It's a big blessing, but how can I relate that to everyone? It's just having things that you love outside of surfing. Like you gotta have other outlets that make you happy,
Hmm.
and um, just because we want to appreciate what we do, and I want to appreciate surfing, and I do. So um, it's just like if you eat prime rib for every night, like eventually you're gonna be over it because it's
Right.
like you're over it. But like, and that's surfing. It's like it's surfing. Surfing is like the best meal you can get. But you also gotta like have that time in between where you appreciate other stuff. And right now my family is like on the top of the list and surfing is at the bottom. But I
Yeah.
think because surfing's at the bottom, it's like I've became better at it because
Huh.
I've tried to like I don't have as much pressure, and when I'm out there, I just really for me where I'm at in my life, like as a surfer and where how far I've come and my skill level, like I think it's important for me to just like remember why I started surfing, and
Mm.
taking a break makes me appreciate it, and I forget about everything else. I forget about accolades. I forget about um, footage. I forget about everything, and I'm just like me in the waves, and I'm just like, wow, okay, I have a family at home, and I got 2 hours to surf, and let me just enjoy every second of it. So if I could give advice to other people, it's just like, okay, like yeah, surfing is cool, but have other things so that way when you do surf, you're fully you're into it. Like I try not to. fit surfing into a busy day. Like if I'm
Mm,
having a busy day and some people are like, "Oh, I gotta surf every day." Like at least if it's like a 20-minute session where I'm like, "I might as well not even surf." Like because
mm,
for me, I feel so rushed. And I don't like that feeling of
mm,
being rushed to surf. Like I want to enjoy it. Um, and that's just like going with competing. Like I've been competing for so long, but I just finished the contest at Haleiwa and like the QS, and I'm deciding to like take a break from it. Um, not saying I quit, but I just really want to like travel. I want to surf, and I just want to feel like freedom, like to
mm.
just surf. And now I understand why like Clay Marzo and like these free surfers like Dane Reynolds, like they don't want to compete because they're they're connected to something higher. It's like they are appreciating it and like competitive surfing too. But then there's just so much to come with it. Like even the top guys are like stressed out. Like John
Yeah.
John, I just seen him. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a year off." Like I don't know if I should be saying this, but I just seen him in person. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna chill, bro. Like just want to be with my kids." And he's
Yeah.
such a chill person. Like I can imagine it's hard for him to balance all that extra
Right.
things
Right.
that come with surfing,
It's a ton of
like
pressure.
professional surfing.
It's so much pressure. And it's so interesting because, like, what you're saying really resonates with a lot of the other topics that we've talked about earlier today. It comes back to like ego as well. And it comes back to balance and trying to like live in a way where you have balance, in your surfing, but then also in your life. And then also when it comes to, it's like dissolving the ego and letting go of those things and just trying to enjoy things. Right. And that's probably when you're going to do your best surfing, is when you're just grateful and you're just like, oh, I'm lucky to be able to surf. I got this sick wave and just be grateful for it, as opposed to like comparing yourself versus the footage and being like, oh, did I do a good turn here? Or I could have done, like it's important to just enjoy,
But if you enjoy that, then it's good, like
Right. Right.
if that's what you enjoy. Like some people enjoy that hype and the competition and all the pressure. Like they
Right.
enjoy that, and it's
Right.
it's good that they found their thing and there's no wrong way. But like yeah, like um the footage and like that's what I ask people too when I'm teaching them. It's like, are you enjoying the process of like
Hmm.
learning, or is it like a thorn in your foot kind of thing where you're like, oh man, I gotta go to training again, like I
Yeah.
gotta go do this, like then it's just never gonna work. Like maybe it's a moment you gotta get through it, but in your heart you gotta enjoy it.
Right. For sure. For sure. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's deep. Um, all right. So another question is, what is your intention when you stand up on a wave? What goes through your mind?
It's gone. There's no thinking. My intention is to honestly, I don't know. Like I just try to surf my best and maximize. Like I just want to have fun, and like the
Yeah.
best surfing I do is when I'm not thinking. So I try not to think. Like just catch the wave and ride the wave, and maybe later it's like, oh, okay, like I could have done this on that wave, but then like I try to think about it before it happens and
Mm,
like visualize it. I do a lot of like visualization, and that's a big way I learn my technique. It's like when I'm practicing or I see my technique, I literally like lie down and I visualize how it feels and how it
mm,
looks. And I like
mhm,
try to really put myself in that moment because when I'm on the wave, it's like it's already programmed in my mind, and then I can just do it and I don't need to think because I've learned like um when I don't think is when I do my best surfing. But then you have to think to learn. You can't just be
Right.
like, oh, I'm just going out there. People might like, what do you mean you don't think? It's like I think before it happens. Like I try
Nice.
to feel it and really visualize it before it even happens. So that way when I get the opportunity and the wave presents itself, I've already done it.
Hmm. Yeah, you've already done all the hard work. It's so interesting because I've interviewed so many people at this point. Um, when I interviewed Philippe Melvaux, he's a coach. He's Hurley team manager as well. I'm sure you probably know him, but he was talking to Philippe Toledo, and Toledo was like, "Oh, I just want to go fast. That's my intention. I just want to go as
Exactly.
fast as possible."
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
then,
They go as fast as you can.
Yeah. But then
Totally.
others are like, just like you, they're just like, no intention. I don't want to be thinking anything, you know? So there's, and then some are like super analytical. It's just really interesting to hear how
Yeah.
people approach it. All
No,
right. If,
like I want to go fast too. I want to go fast, but it's like you're going fast, you know. You're already going
yeah.
fast. Like I got these boards. You see that? Those
Yeah.
things go fast. So
Yeah.
that's the speed is there.
Oh yeah. Those things go fast. I mean, I remember seeing this one clip of you. I think you were at Pipe and, dude, it was a massive wave and you just came that close to getting clobbered by the lip. And then like you make it around that section and you pump and then like the section pinches in front of you and then you like just make it through, like you push through the white curtain. And I was just like, what the heck, dude? That's just a different level of just committing to it. And speed obviously too, but it's just like you got to commit. It's gnarly. And you know what's funny? Actually, I remember I was in the water at Lonnie's on one day, and you were sitting there. I didn't, I didn't know you, but I heard you were talking to somebody, and you're just like, yeah, when because I think you're talking about surfing at Pipe or something like that, and you're like, yeah, you got to just be ready to lay it all on the line when you're when you're surfing out there. And I was like, that sounds
For
gnarly.
sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
One thing, it's like pipe. It's like it's such a big deal now. Like it's like it's not just me. It's like my whole family. Like we talk about it. Like daddy's gonna go. You know, like um, it's like a whole family. It's like we're all committed. You know, and it's like
mm,
it's not just me anymore. And like there's so many other dads out there. Like Billy Kemper. He inspires me a lot, and we're good friends. And like we talk, we can connect. You know, and like we're just like, bro, like it's not even about us. Like if when every time I go surf, my girlfriend and my kids, they're like biting their fingernails at home, like waiting for me to call them, you know,
right.
to come back home. Or they're just like hoping, obviously hoping I catch a good wave. And it's like my girlfriend's always like, it's dangerous. Like if it was up to me, like I would say don't go, but I know you love it. So we're like supporting you. Like this is a
Mm,
family decision. So it's like, yeah, it's a big deal. It's like you gotta commit. It's not just me, but it's like the whole team is committed to that
mm.
life and that to the whole environment of pipeline.
Yeah. I mean, if it says any right, like Kai Lenny surfs like the biggest waves in the world, but where he gets the gnarliest injury is at Pipe, right? So
Totally.
that just says how gnarly Pipe is, like super gnarly. All right, so two more questions. If you were going to surf the same wave for the rest of your life, what would it be? And if it's a secret spot, you don't have to name the name, but like what you can describe it.
So that's the thing. Like this is why I stopped. Like it's hard for me to travel and compete because it
Right.
costs a lot of money. So
Yeah.
like if you were to ask me today, it's gonna say I'll say pipeline. Like
Yeah.
and
Okay.
probably forever. But then there's so many other waves in the world that I haven't surfed yet. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there's another wave. Maybe it's deserts or Namibia or cloud break.
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
because pipeline's so heavy, you
Yeah.
know, and it's like, oh, do I really want to like do that for the rest of my life? Because it's not always fun. I'm gonna be honest. It's not always fun. It's really intense and it's gnarly, and the
Yeah.
reward is fun. And sometimes that intense vibe is fun, but sometimes it's overwhelming. And when it gets small, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I can just go surf VLAN today. Like it feels
Right.
good. So like if I think of my dream wave, it would be like a kind of like a mellow wave, but you can just get super drained and ripped. Because I like to do turns too. Like
Yeah.
I'm not just a barrel guy. Like I love
Right.
to surf. So like for the rest of my life, like I feel like it would be like I don't know, maybe like Canduis or like Cloud
Uh,
Break. I've never surfed these waves, but I just
yeah.
those are the waves that I'm like dying to surf. Like
Right.
and I wanna see how good I can surf those waves, and I wanna show the world, and I wanna experience that. So that's my new goals like this summer. It's to go and surf these perfect long left
Oof.
hand barreling rippable waves.
Yeah. I think Kelly, well, I was talking to Todd Glazer, who's Kelly's photographer, right? And he said that Kelly would say that Cloud Break is his favorite wave because apparently it's
Sick.
the perfect wave from 2 foot to like 20 foot. It's just like,
Exactly.
that sounds pretty nice.
That
Except
sounds sick. That
it's
sounds
left for me
sick.
though. You're goofy though. You're goofy, so you'd
Yeah.
love that.
But yeah, I'd love to go on a right too. Like I feel like I surf more backside than anything because all of our
Oh,
waves are rights, like
right.
Sunset, Lonnie's, VLAN,
Yeah.
Haleiwa, like Rocky rights, like gas chambers. Like it's all rights. Like the only left we got is like Pipeline and Rocky's one is small. Couple other secret spots, but no really left that is big where I can ride like a
Right.
RP, like a 6'3", where I
Right.
can open up and do huge turns. Like it's pretty rare to find that. But I surf most, so I surf mostly right.
That's true. That's true. Oh man, yeah, I'm stoked for you. That sounds like a fun next summer if you're going to Cloud Break and you can do and all that kind of stuff. That's gonna be sick. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
my new dream for
Uh,
sure to
that's
surf.
that's a good dream. That's a good dream. All right. So I think I already know the answer, but what board would you bring on a deserted island?
If I could only take one board,
You only take one board. What would it be?
gotta be the RP for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the new ones. Like I don't know if you've talked to Eric recently, but we're figuring out how to turn the RP into like a short board. So
Hmm.
it's like a high performance short board, but for like good waves.
Hmm.
And if you're gonna travel, you're not gonna travel to go chase like some terrible wave. You know what I'm saying? Like every
For sure.
surfer is gonna, whether it's 2 foot to 15 foot, you want it to be a good wave. So it's like we want an RP that can work good from 2 foot to as big as you want to go. But so if you have an RP that works in 2 foot in like a good wave, like a
Hmm.
sick 2 foot wave, like we want the board to feel good. So like that would be my board, and it's been really fun working on that with Eric, and I know a lot of the other team riders have been enjoying it, and yeah, because the RP is like a such a sick board. It's
Yeah.
so sick, and we've brought it back to where it belongs.
Nice. Well, I mean, I didn't even get to really dive into like talking about boards with you. So we'll definitely have to have you back on because I want to chat about boards. I also want to chat about just like surfing pipe. I just want to hear more about what that sounds like. So we'll definitely have to schedule a follow up. But I think that's we're hitting the hour mark. It was
Sick,
really
dude.
fun to talk to you, and yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, fan. I really appreciate you, and good job with Go Basis Surf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
surf
Okay.
basis surf.
Surf
That's the
Surf
brand.
Basis Surf. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Look at
no
me. I'm
worries.
over here and I don't even know it. I
It's
don't
all
even know
good,
it
dude.
correctly. But yeah, it's really sick, and I look forward to chatting more with you. I enjoyed my time, and it's good for me to remind myself, and talking about it is like it's a big deal for me, and I appreciate you.
Cool, man. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, set up the
All
next call.
right.
Later,
All right.
man.